We looked the other day at unity and how we build that in design, and then we built off of that on emphasis. And how do we emphasize a particular component of that layout of that design? How do we make what's most important the most important, and what's second most important, etc.? How do we create that hierarchy? Today I want to talk quickly about balance, right? So here's our acronym. You want to remember those. Burpham, how do we remember some of the principles of design? So the next one is balance. And balance is thinking about equal distribution of weight. And there's more than one way of doing that. But if you divided a page into down the middle, left and right, easy way of thinking about it. Central axis there is left and right exactly the same? Are they equal but not mirrored? Or do they come out of a central point in the circle, right? So we look at symmetric, asymmetric, and radial balance. If you look at this one on the right, if you cut the page in half, left and right are not exactly the same. And that one is just one way of designing. Another way I could just mention was cutting the page in half, and left and right are exactly the same. That's just a mirrored version. And if you cut it in half, you might be able to actually see a line visually in that mountain. But what's interesting with this one is that the words are actually mirrored. If you look at that, step on no pets, you can read it the same, but it's just cut in half. So it's left and right exactly the same. It's symmetrically balanced. It's a safe option. And if you look at this book cover, if you look at it as a front cover, spine, and back cover, the main element of the hands are actually mirrored. They're symmetrical, right? They're exactly the same. Now the text is where we add a little bit of variety running down the spine or on the front cover, but left and right, if you just fold the page in half or unfold the page in half, you get this symmetrical balance for the most part. It can kind of create an interesting composition in terms of front to back. Here's another one on the left. Let's look at this World's Fair. Cut it in half, left and right. It's not exactly the same, so it's asymmetrical. And what's interesting with this is that what do you feel is going to happen to that ball or that sphere in the center? Is it going to go to the right down the curve, or is it going to go left towards that tall peak? Well, most likely, originally looking at it, it's going to fall to the right. So what did the designers do? They rotated things just subtly to make it feel like there's less of a chance that that's going to go away. So you see these two shapes drawing our attention, as well as these leading lines down to those yellowish triangle and circle shapes, and guiding us that way. On the right, cut it in half. It's not exactly the same. But what's interesting with this one is that there's a little more weight on the right, perhaps with physical things. We can use space on the left to help balance some of that out. So all of that hair and the letter M and the word public down the right might weigh a little bit more, but there's more white space on the left. So ways that we can affect balance. I've been talking mostly about left and right and what those do, and thinking about balance that way. But we can also think about the center from bottom to top. And typically where we want or where we have it is just right in the middle from the bottom to the top. But what we do in terms of balance is use what's called the optical center. So we shift things up just a hair. And a hair might be an inch, it might be 2 inches, but we move things up to give a little more balance with the bottom. And where we often saw this is where we're using mat board, and we leave a little bit of space for our hands or our name in the corners, the title. So it's another way of thinking about balance, both vertically but also horizontally. We can also think about scale, we can think about shape, we can think about all these different elements, and literally elements, right? Shape, color, texture, value, All those things are things that we looked at, but how do we combine some of those to help with balance? So we might do something like this. We might change the size and the shape. We might change black or consider black versus white. We might think about dull versus bright or vibration of a color. We might give it more strength. Or we might use warm and cool colors. Those can change the way that the balance works. So what I want you to really think about with this part is just what you can control in your design as you look at how do I make it balanced. Yeah, centered is safe. I mentioned that before, but how can we not center things and still make left and right, top to bottom, the same in terms of balance? So here's an example. Cut it in half, left and right. Is it balanced? I would say so. And it's symmetrically balanced, right? Left and right, other than, it's not mirrored text, but it's the same text, and the text is centered, and it's all really aligned in the middle of this kid's body, right? Between his eyes and his nose and his teeth, and then the Altoid box, and then the buttons on his shirt, and then the text. Everything is centered. Compare that to this one, left and right. Not exactly the same, but what's been created or added there is white space. And if you think about what I was mentioning is that optical balance is that things have shifted up. It's that where that, and if you notice, the small motorcycle versus its reflection, which is quite big, it's different, right? Kind of fascinating in its imagery. But that's actually been shifted up. That horizontal line of where the water meets the land, where the two motorcycle tires meet, that's been shifted up, and it allows more white space down at the bottom. But left and right, it's not centered, so there's more space, visual space on the left, but there's more artwork on the right, including the text. So just thinking about balance, using optical center, using left and right balance. Maybe you rotate things, maybe you change the scale of something, maybe you think about what it is that we should see first, and how do we balance it with everything else? Just using these two examples as well, the rotation angle makes a difference, the space between them makes a difference, the hierarchy makes a difference. So as you guide the viewer through, how do you get them to notice that? But color contrast can make a difference, shape contrast, using the elements of design can help with your balance.